Hi, my name's Phil. I like to come out politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss some claims Nigel Farage made about crime. In a nutshell, they are all provably false, who'd have thunk it, but what I'm not seeing too many people pick up on is that Farage seems to have used his speech on crime to encourage his followers to commit crimes. But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So as I've said before, as the Conservatives try to encroach, embarrassingly unsuccessfully, onto Reform UK's territory and continue to do so even though polling has shown they're just losing even more votes since trying, Reform UK are positioning themselves into more traditional Conservative territory, you know, just to emphasise the fact that they're not like the Conservatives. And yesterday it seems it was time to talk about crime. Now, crime is a nice mainstream topic for all political parties, only when politicians talk about crime, it's usual for them to talk about reducing crime. Farage's supporters often say he does things differently, and they had good reason to do so yesterday because the Reform UK leader seemed to be encouraging more crime. During his speech, Farage also made some claims about crime which were so laughably false that even he recognised how easy it would be to debunk them, so he had to claim that the official figures are all full of false data. So let's kick off with those before discussing how he is actually encouraging his supporters to increase the rates of crime in the country. So Farage claimed that he didn't like the usual way of measuring crime because he claimed it was full of false data. No, Farage is just doing what he does and making false claims in order to position himself as the only person who will address the mostly fabricated problems. Typical populist tactics. So what were the claims and what is the reality? Well, in terms of crime in general, Farage said that crime against the person was rising. Now, there are a couple of ways in which this is measured, but in both versions, it's fallen, at least since Labour took office. So even with the measure Farage wanted to use, he cannot draw the conclusion he did. Even the Tories have a reasonable measure to show that crime against the person fell while they were in government as well. So essentially, this is how Farage's pitch went on that particular issue. Crime against the person is rising. No, look, say the Tories, it's been falling pretty much year on year for the last decade. But I don't like the way you're measuring it. Okay, why not? I mean, our data comes from the Office for National Statistics. What's wrong with it? I don't like the crime survey method, but it's regarded as the most accurate measure. I don't care. We should go by police recorded data. But that doesn't record crimes which aren't reported to the police. I don't care. The police figures back up my points. So that's the word I'm using. But, say Labour, according to that measure, crime against the person has at least fallen this year. What? Look, it's gone down. No, yeah, look, down. You're not supposed to look at the data. Just believe me when I say it's rising. It's not rising, it fell. So no matter how you measure it, Farage cannot credibly claim it's rising. The best he can do, by using a measure which excludes loads of crimes, because particularly at a time where what we know is crime detection rates for a lot of types of crime fell dramatically under the Tories. So if you don't believe the police will do anything about it, there's a lot of people who won't report certain crimes because they don't think anything will be done. You know, one big one would be violence against women, for example. Domestic violence often isn't reported to the police, but it can be picked up in the crime survey. So that's what he does. The best he can do, using a measure which excludes loads of crimes, is claim that it rose under the Tories, but he still can't claim it rose under Labour. And Labour are the default government at the next election. So what's next? Oh yeah, this is the meat of it. He said shoplifting anything worth less than £200 is no longer a crime. That if you do it, nothing will happen to you. Which is incredibly reckless, by the way, given that he particularly appeals largely to people who are really struggling with money. Doesn't he risk getting people to shoplift by telling them this? He's basically inciting a crime here. Now, if what he was saying were true, by the way, you could just argue that it was simply pointing out the facts and that it is the fault of the law and the government who passed it that this relatively low level shoplifting is no longer a crime. Yeah, but it is a crime. And it's a crime which can put you in prison if convicted as well. And because sometimes you might think, oh, but sometimes there's things that where the police deprioritise it and therefore realistically, yeah, in theory you could go to jail, but no one ever does. No, people go into jail all the time for things like this. We've seen it. You know, people stealing food or baby food, for example, are in prison. So it is actually happening. So when he said that if you shoplift anything less than £200, nothing will happen to you, he was lying. If one of his followers believed him and they're struggling, right, and they decide to try shoplifting some food or something in the belief that if caught, they face no legal hazard, they would certainly find themselves with a criminal record and could find themselves imprisoned. I mean, seriously, this isn't just Farage lying. He's effectively inciting people to commit crimes by telling them there are no consequences for crimes that a lot of his supporters would be tempted to commit. And if Farage wants to talk about shoplifting being on the rise, there is such a thing as petty shoplifting, of course, yes. I remember the millionaire chef a few years ago, Anthony Worrell Thompson. He was caught shoplifting. He was going through mental health problems at the time. He didn't need to shoplift, right? But in general, it's a crime strongly linked with poverty. Shoplifting goes up when poverty goes up. Shoplifting is a more serious problem now. Why? Because first austerity and then Farage's own Brexit have driven living standards down catastrophically. This is a classic case of the arsonist complaining about the smoke. So is his claim based on anything? Well, shoplifting goods worth up to £200 was downgraded in seriousness in 2014. So there was a change in the law regarding shoplifting goods up to a value of £200, yes. But it's still a criminal offence. It still carries a potential custodial sentence. It's just that the sentence now will be less than it would have been 12 years ago. But you will still be convicted and sentenced. And because shoplifting is higher, like the rates of it are higher than it was when Nigel Farage wasn't influencing governments, shops actually pursue it more vigorously. So in reality, you are now more likely to be convicted for shoplifting today than 10 years ago. I'm not sure any Farage supporter trying this out and finding themselves in prison is going to be comforted by the fact that what the lying gobshite should have said is that, oh no, sorry, what I meant is you won't go to prison for as long. I mean, that's like nothing happened to you, isn't it? If there is a law which needs changing, do you know what it is? It's that public figures should not be allowed to tell lies. Telling lies which could have the effect of encouraging people to commit crimes should be a particularly serious offence. Because Farage didn't spin things here. It wasn't a spin, he actually lied. The single biggest problem with any political system in any country is people being allowed to mislead the public. And shoplifting wasn't the only crime Farage seemed to be inciting. After denying that he'd done anything to lay the groundwork for the Farage riots last summer, he was at it again, talking about major civil unrest in a way which was clearly giving people carte blanche to riot again and then blame the government. And he kept, oh yeah, there weren't any bad faith actors. No bad faith actors there. Maybe there was some Antifa. A few bad eggs, yeah, okay. But mostly it was concerned families. You know what these concerned families in Epping were doing, right? They were handing out white supremacy leaflets. That's what those concerned families were doing. But this was a major push from the party in general, because their new MP, Sarah Pochin, was at it as well, before Farage even spoke, effectively saying that their supporters should riot to show their displeasure with the government. Oh, don't worry, it's not your fault if you riot, it's the government's fault. Pochin herself is already in trouble with her own constituents for making false claims about crime levels in Runcorn. But she and Farage are now effectively trying to light the fuse on more civil unrest this summer for their own purposes. Farage thinks he got away with it. He shouldn't have got away with it. There should have been proper investigations into the people really behind those riots last year, and there wasn't. So Farage got away with it, right? So he's thinking, oh, well, that was all right. That was all right. We'll do it again. And if it happens, you just watch Farage scurry away for a couple of weeks to hide from the consequences like he did last summer.
I've no idea.
Well, I can tell you.
No idea.
Well, I can tell you what's happened there, and I can ask you whether you...
No idea.
You don't know?
Whether what you say is true or not, I've no idea.
I know nothing. What? I know nothing. Oh, I know nothing. I am from Barcelona.
America made a huge mistake in not dealing with a mob boss threatening to take over the government, and now look where they are. Labour are making a lot of improvements to the standards expected in politics, sure, but something big. A special law applicable to those with a public profile who comment on political matters, and especially elected politicians, to not make any statement they cannot reasonably suppose is true, and one which prevents them encouraging or excusing violent behaviour. Because in terms of where we actually are with crime, it has risen under the Tories. Famously, in their last couple of years, they tried to claim that crime had fallen, but they always had to add the caveat, if you exclude fraud. But fraud had risen to like the #1 crime in England and Wales, for which the Westminster government is largely responsible, right? So it's like, oh, if you ignore the largest source of crime, crimes actually fell, which was, okay, true. But violent crimes against women have generally increased if taken together. some individual ones have fallen, but taken together. Interestingly, unless I missed it, Farage didn't seem bothered about those two sources of crime. Literally, the two types of crime which actually have been increasing don't seem worthy of Farage's attention. Maybe that's because he's less interested in coming up with ways of reducing crime than he is of making people fear the threat of crime, which is either non-existent or very much exaggerated. The typical ploy of the con artist in elections claim to be the only one who will deal with this threat. Funnily enough, when they win power, those threats just seem to escalate. So the main takeaways from Farage's speech are that he could only make his points by using incomplete data, rubbishing the official data. Even then, his own actually incomplete data didn't back up the point he was claiming, if you looked at it. He effectively incited his supporters to commit two types of crime because he doesn't care about them going to prison if it helps him break politics enough to slip through the cracks into power. That's what his speech was essentially about. I can make any claim I like as long as I do not accept official statistics. And I want my supporters to destroy the UK for the sake of my own personal avarice. But let me know what you think in the comments below. For more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.